Hey, this is Max. Welcome back to another CSR2 video. I'm here with the Mysterious Stranger account, and I am going to review the next season's PC car, the Continental GT. We're going to go look at the Stage 6 effects as well as talk about supply cup tunes for this vehicle. This way, we can get a better understanding of what we're all up against next season with regard to the PC cup as well as the supply cup. So the Continental GT, fully maxed, is about an 8.5 car. Now, I did not actually research into what the world record is with this car because, quite frankly, I don't care. I don't really think this car's that useful in the long run. And quite frankly, with Bentley Fusions being as hard as they are to come by for new players, this is not a car you really want to invest a whole lot of energy into. Right now, I have the Dino at 8.557. I'm not really sure how to drive this optimally, so I can't really hit that dyno. I would suggest looking up Zoocar or Adreno A88's videos when it comes to shift patterns and max tunes. So that is the max tune. Where is this car with stage 5? Let's put it back to stage 5 and let's talk about that as well as talk about supply cup possibilities at the same time. So as I already mentioned, this car does not beat dyno easily from shift pattern, which makes it a little harder to use for supply cup. However, there is a positive silver lining to the way these Bentleys work, and this is true of both this one and the GT Speed. These cars have really quick acceleration in the quarter mile, and then they kind of fall off near the end. So a supply cup's done through the quarter mile, not a half mile, and therefore, when you have quarter mile setups that can potentially run very quickly, it's actually not a bad car to do the supply cup with. Here's why. Just with stage 5 full fusion, now mind you, this is full fusion, you're looking at a 6.388 quarter mile. If you recall my Toyota supply cup video, the fastest opponent you get runs about a 7.08 to 7.07, which is the LaFerrari opponent. Everybody else is generally slower. So if you have a car that runs faster than 7 seconds in the quarter mile, you do not need a special tune for supply cups. You can't lose. So that's one good starting point about the Bentley, that you could potentially beat the entire supply cup without having to deal with even worrying about a special tune. So that is stage 5. And stage 5 only, you can get a pretty decent tune out of the car, and it does about a 10.4. You could probably get a slightly better number than I am here with some fine tuning. But again, as you can see, just playing with some nitrous here, I can get a little more out of it. So 10.4 something is probably what you're looking at with stage 5 only. Now, that being said, each stage 6 will add a certain amount of time between this time and 8.5. That means, unlike, say, the GR Supra, which is already very close to its maxed out time, even without stage 6s, this car has quite the margin. You're looking at about a 2-second, little less than 2-second margin for 7 upgrades, which means each one will have some effect, and some of them will have a decent amount of effect, probably a few tenths. So let's start with engine. Engine generally doesn't do a whole lot on tier 5 cars. Not to say that it won't do anything, but it's not usually a strong stage 6. So let's take a look and see what it does here. A dyno without fine tuning, you're looking at about a 2/10 change, not quite. Let's see if we can fine tune it a little bit and maybe squeeze a little bit more out of it. Probably, but not a whole lot is what I'm feeling here. So without spending a lot of time, you're looking at about a little bit less than 2/10 here for engine. So engine does help a little bit, but not a whole lot. Let's move to the next one over, and that should be turbo. So engine, it's okay. Turbo and intake's going to be weak. That's almost a given, simply because I haven't found too many tier 5 cars that really shines with turbo or intake. There are always exceptions, but there's a general pattern to most of these cars. So turbo definitely doesn't do as much as engine, and even with a little bit of tweaking here, we can see if it can push much beyond that number, maybe a little bit, but not by much. You're talking only about 2-3 points here of changes, even with some fine tuning. So you're not going to get a huge change out of this car. So, maybe 327. So about a tenth drop, not very impressive. Certainly weaker than engine, and certainly we're going through the weak ones at the moment. Intake with 2 fusions added could either surpass turbo by a little bit or somehow fail even more. It really depends on what it ends up here. So it looks like intake is a little better. Let's dyno intake and see where that ends up at. 10.271 makes it better than turbo. So right now turbo is the bottom of the pack. And intake's actually not doing too bad. All right, so intake almost on par with engine. Turbo definitely a good chunk slower. So right now we're looking at 3 pretty weak ones. Now we're moving into the other 4, which generally will start to be pretty strong. So let's take a look at nitrous. Now, nitrous will require tuning. That's without a doubt, simply because we have increased the overall duration here. So just by tweaking it, we can see a little bit about the evo changes here. And then maybe it can push beyond this even more, depending on what tire and other things will do for it. 9.9 from a 10.4, so that's a big drop. 10.4 1.7, let's say 2.1 is what I had, but you can probably get to 10.4, very low 10.4s. Now you're dropping from a 10.4 to 9.98, essentially almost 10, but still a full 4/10 plus drop, which is impressive and is the top so far. Unless, of course, one of the other 3 exceeds it in performance, which it could. Let's take a look at the next one, which is body. Body traditionally is a pretty good one. But is it going to beat nitrous? That's going to be the question. Not based on those numbers. It probably won't. But it's going to come closer to nitrous than it is going to be to engine. Let's see where we're at with this one. Let's first tweak it, see if we can get a little more out of it. What about this? .034. I probably could get a little more out of this with some more tuning. Yeah, like that. So you could probably get somewhere to the point of maybe even almost near 10 flat, but still nitrous has the lead at the moment. But that's not to say body's weak. That is also about a 4/10 drop, which is still impressive. So between the two, you're already looking at almost full second drop here. And certainly with the top 3, you should get well over a second drop out of this car. So 3 top ones are going to be important versus the weaker ones are probably not going to do as much. So let's take a look at tire. And tire is right there with engine. So tire's not as strong as, say, some of the others. Let's see if we can get more than this out of it. Probably need a slightly more aggressive final drive, but that's not always going to be helpful. So 230 something is what. Yeah, so we're looking at about a 229, 230 from a 421. So it's a little bit less than 210s, but basically about where engine dropped it. So engine, intake, tire, kind of close on their times. And then you're moving to the final one here, which is transmission. Given we had only 2 big ones and so far 4 relatively weak ones, I suspect transmission is going to be pretty decent. because it has to make up the difference for the rest of that time. And that means transmission may be also a right there with body. So trans and body very tight. Um, what trans may be able to edge out body though. Let me see. Not a guarantee here by any means, but um, very little, right? By about a hundredth. But then again, if I was very carefully tuning this, it could end up the other way possibly. So I would just say those two guys are probably interchangeable with a little bit of a lead going to trans. So right now you're looking at the order of stage 6 effects. Basically, the strongest would be nitrous, followed by trans, body, and then it's tire, engine, intake, and turbo coming in last. So those are your stage 6 effects. So knowing that now, let's put the top 3 in and tune it. And then we'll put the bottom 4 in and tune it. And that gives you like a range of strong versus weak stage 6 with full fusions. Now, if you don't have full fusions, of course, you could be even slower by another decent chunk of time. So keep that in mind as well. All right, let's see. We can get maybe right here. So it looks like that's about the most I'm going to see here. Can play with this a little bit, see if that'll help. Notice it doesn't seem to really like a higher top speed necessarily. It's sticking to 254, 257. Now 257 is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7th gear. I may be able to put 257 here and accomplish something similar. But it looks like with more upgrades, it prefers that higher gear now. Before, most of the tune was on 6th gear. Now it's on 7th gear. But let's see if we can. 9.1. So you dropped from a 10.4 to a 9.1 with 3 stage 6s. So that's pretty impressive for 3 strong stage 6. Like I said, almost a second and a half, not quite, a second and 3/10 about drop from just 3 stage 6s. That doesn't bode well for the other 4 because the other 4 would only have to make between 9.1 to 8.5. That's only a high 8.5. So that's only about 5/10 total with 4 of them. That means the other 4 may just put us at 9.9, 9.8, maybe if we're lucky. So you're talking 4 stage 6s that barely drop you from 10.4 to 9.9, and then 3 stage 6s that'll get you to 9.1. I suspect this cup is going to end up somewhere in the 9.5, 9.6 range again, based on the difficulty ratings of the last PC Cup. And this car's been around a while. Bentley's, yeah, the fusions are not easy, but Natural Motion may not see it that way because they figure you've been playing long enough, you should have plenty of Bentley fusions. So 9.88 for the other 4 untuned. Probably like a little bit better if you tune it really strongly. Maybe we can get to something like a 9.82, A3 maybe. I'm not even that optimistic, but 9.86 is what I'm looking at now. So 9.86 for 4 stage 6s full fusion, that's pretty rough. If you average out between 9.1 and 9.8 and kind of take it down the middle there, I would say 9.5, 9.6 full fusion situation would be a tough, relatively tough PC Cup. If Natural Motion is trying to make it easier on us, 10.1, 9.9, 10.0, that would be more fair because that means that you still need some stage 6, but you may be able to get away without full fusion, or you have the strong stage 6 and lacking a decent amount of fusions. We'll see. I mean, this is something that I speculate once in a while, but it really almost never plays out the exact same way I would expect it to. So now, so far, there hasn't been too much good news when it comes to driving this car. Let's finally do a test run. I'll see what I can do here without totally embarrassing myself, but I can tell you I'm probably not going to even hit Dino, and I'm going to try to launch and then not redline the car because the shifts comes pretty quick. Yeah, shifted fifth a little quick. Now you notice the shifts slow down. Now this car again doesn't have even shifts, which is very annoying. So you have, slow shift, quick shift, and then slow shift, then long, then short, and that makes every shift not quite exactly the same, and that's very annoying. On a 9.8, I just did a 10, so that didn't really go too well. So I'm running well slower than Dino with the shift pattern. You may be able to get much better if you use nitrous in third, or you get it working in second, but then you have to make sure you hit the right gears. Again, I'll look up Zukar myself and see how he does it, but again, he always uses fully maxed cars, and they will shift a little differently at that point. Okay, so this one already redlined 2 gears, so I suspect this is going to be just as bad, although it may be slightly quicker than, not really. So I'm running over a tenth slower than what Dino says. You got to play with the nitrous timing and all that fun stuff to try to get this thing to work right. But right now, I can tell you this is not a fun car to drive for anything. However, once again, that time means you really don't have that much of an issue as far as supply cup is concerned. Okay, what about if you don't have enough parts to hit under sevens for quarter mile? What are you going to do about supply cup then? Is there a way to get this thing to beat Dino? Well, yes, it doesn't do it by much, but it's doable, and it's a basically no engine turbo or intake or variation of some level of upgrade of the 3 to trigger what is essentially a Dino Evo drop tune, which it's you can possibly leave some of these parts in and still accomplish the goal, but you have to get the points low enough to get a dyno beating setup that the computer recognizes. So dropping parts without adjusting the tune, or even if you adjust the tune, it doesn't necessarily make it beat dyno. You really have to have a drop that is substantial enough, and you'll see it when you get there, that there will be a substantial drop based on increased grip that will be reflected with a one-notch move. So if you have this kind of little bit at a time movement, that's not going to do anything. Whoops. So this is not going to be dyno yet. It's going to have to require more parts dropped to actually beat dyno. So we're going to go back and finally drop off those 2 stages because even those 2 stages are getting in the way. Most likely engine, because it's a pretty strong increase in Evo. That's not quite it either. Let's try this. And this. So let's see if there's a substantial drop. I don't see a major jump here, although there was probably like a 200 Evo drop somewhere there. Let's take a look. That was more than it should have added just from that. So I have tire stage 6 in too. Let's make it a stage 5 because some of us may not have stage 6 yet. So you're looking at this number here. Pretty low Evo, 0, 100 and 0, 2.0 final drive. Now again, if you go up and you see a substantial jump like that, then you probably do have a legitimate dyno beating setup. And if you move it down, you can see where it has the actual drop. Somewhere around there, it went basically 200 points in one shot. Like that. So you have 535 at 7.8, and then 1 slot or 2 down, you get the 394, which is 8.0. Now, mind you, that's not that much of a difference, okay? That may just compensate for the fact that I'm running slower to start with. So I could push it a little further to try to give it a little greater margin like that, but then the card's going to launch more difficult. So for supply cup purposes, you could use this. It's not that great, but it's workable. Main thing is you can't launch anywhere near perfect either. You're going to have to either launch early or late. I would recommend early since you're not using a launch button. What you can do is just kind of launch like this, and then nitrous and let it run its course. And that will definitely get you well under dyno enough that supply cup will be pretty straightforward. And this again does not require you to have full stage 5 full fusions. You can do this with like stage 3 or 4 as well. And possibly even as low as stage 1 or 2. You might be able to get something where it beats dyno a little bit. Run the car stock, run it with nitrous only, run it with trans only. I mean, there are different little strategies you can do, but obviously if I'm running 7.8 on an 8.38 dyno, I won't have a problem with supply cup either. But going back to an important point that people always confuse, supply cup is not PC cup. What works for supply cup does not work for PC cup. You cannot tune a car to beat dyno and then beat PC cup. You just have to upgrade a car and then run it the best you can. So that is essentially the Bentley Continental GT. Without the down tune, as I said, I can't drive this thing, so I have no love for it. With the down tune, I know I can easily beat supply cup, so at least there's hope there. But when it comes to the actual PC cup, I'm probably going to be struggling a bit unless I get lucky and get those big stage 6s. Those are the ones I'm going to be looking for. So that is your PC cup review for next season, along with some supply cup tips. Let me know what you think. If you find there are other strategies with this car that helps you shift your way into a slight beating of the dyno, please share. I suck at shifting this thing, and I admit it, and I hate it for that reason. But if you got a strategy, you know the nitrous timing, the shift timing, please share it with the rest of us so we can all learn something. In any case, hopefully you'll have a smooth supply cup and PC cup next season. This is not a car, as a new player, I would recommend you to invest a whole lot of money into. Meaning, if you're relatively new and this is one of your first PC cars, get the car, but if you don't have $6 million just sitting around, maybe don't rush to build it, and don't try to make those PC cup points, and instead focus on making those points in live or some other method. Okay, and that concludes this review of the Continental GT from me. If you liked the video, please leave me a like. If you like to get notifications when I put up new videos, subscribe to the channel so you can get those notifications. And as always, thank you for watching my videos. I'll catch you next time.